I defer to the distinguished representative from Assemblymember Wood's office.
If you wouldn't mind, if I go, I do have to hop off at 11:30. Sorry, things are a little bit crazy today. Okay, so I can give a brief update. Thank you, Brian. Yeah, I think maybe a brief sort of our understanding of what's going on following May Revise might be helpful, and some of what we saw in the Capitol this week and AB 41. So obviously some exciting news for some folks regarding middle mile infrastructure rollout in the governor's May Revise. I think we, at least in the legislature, are very cautiously optimistic. I think right now we're just ultimately struggling with, that's a lot of money in a big project, and what are the details? And so I think the legislature is going to continue to be asking in the coming weeks, what does this look like and roll out? How are we doing it? I can say that, and pivoting to sort of separately from this, which I don't know as well right now. I think Assemblywoman Gonzalez and Assemblywoman Aguiar-Curry's bills I still think some remains to be seen, as they obviously are trying to work together to kind of come together. But regarding AB 41, I can give you kind of a brief sort of idea of where we started with the bill and where we're at with the news from the governor. So the bill really started, just, I would say the general ethos of it was Dr. Wood was getting frustrated kind of hearing about some of the situations in Mendocino and Sonoma, especially. I think you guys all know Calvin and his issues getting some service in Hacienda. I mean, like kind of this divide and conquer we were seeing in rural areas at times. It just frankly wasn't as perhaps as profitable as what we're concerned to serve some of these communities. Ultimately, what we're trying to do on the state side and on the rural deployment side is just increase efficiencies. So bringing back Dig Once, which my boss brought forward in 2017, Caltrans just plain and simple didn't honor its commitment to do Dig Once. There was 1 mile, we just found out a couple weeks ago, there was 1 mile of it, like basically right next to Nevada, with an extremely plugged in stakeholder group that got it done. And so we are continuing to kind of, that's where I was a little bit late. I apologize. Continue to turn the screws on Caltrans to say, if you're opening up the road, a lot of these rural highways, they're going to be opened up at this scale once every 40 years. And we need to really be considering putting conduit in, because that's the future. And then two, our ask to providers was, if we're making this investment as the state, we gotta kind of rein in this practice of cherry picking some of the deployment we've seen. Understand that it's a little bit onerous to notify folks and understand that there's concerns about competition and business practice. But we were getting concerned. I guess what we were hearing at our office is we were getting constituents calling on both ends when they reached out to say, hey, we hear there's a deployment coming. We'd like to be a part of it. They'd say, that's for an individual. We can't put you on that. And then on the back end, once it was there, when they try to pull off it, they'd say, well, if only we knew you were interested, we would have built the project that way. And so we just feel that rural folks aren't able to organize in the same way that an HOA is in bargain. It's kind of, some of these ways rural groups organize is just not something that some of the providers can bargain with. And yeah, not to beat up on them too much, I would do the same thing, right? If a business is willing to pay $100,000 to build out your infrastructure wholly, of course you're going to do it. But we would just like some more capacity for folks to draw off that, because it's a little bit of gerrymandering if that's how our infrastructure starts to look. So that's where we went. And with the May Revise, we got off the floor with the amendments that were taken in Trent and CNC, in appropriations. All the opposition moved off. I think there was only one no vote from a cantankerous legislator in Southern California, but overwhelmingly supportive, I think. And we're just going to continue with 41 to kind of complement what is going on with the May revise. And I think we can look for some amendments in the Senate, hopefully, and hopefully it's something that the providers and Caltrans are all excited to work with. But ultimately, I think we can comfortably say that we're going to try and ensure that building off the middle mile infrastructure is still possible for rural communities. That's always been the intent of the bill. We just want efficiencies. We're not asking people to do it for free. Just we want people to have a voice to say, we've got a community of 200 households on a 10-mile stretch, whatever. 200 customers is probably more likely, 4 people in each house, able to do that. And so, yeah, we're excited. I don't know if there's any questions for you all. Sorry, that was kind of quick. We were in Sacramento last week, so playing a little bit of catch up today.
Thanks, Will. Does the group have a question? I don't hear any. Thank you for that report. Obviously, you were very thorough. Appreciate it.
Yeah, and I can also add too, just really quick, just as I'm digesting a little bit of the call just now, I think it is sounding like just a little bit of insight into the May revise, which is not in any way sort of a lot of detail right now that we're seeing formally, but it does sound like Caltrans is going to be deploying it, and that the Department of Technology is going to be managing the infrastructure, and there will be an opportunity to perhaps lease existing middle mile. But I do think we can look forward to a middle mile moving across our state that we all can talk on an even plane about and pulling off that. I think that's where it's moving. But again, sort of, I think we're still, a lot of details remain to be sorted out in the coming weeks. So
look forward to those details. Thanks again.
Yeah.
So I've added to the chat a message from Taylor Morrison of Senator Mike McGuire's office regarding the $7 billion and the timelines, which I could circulate later as well. But circling back around, I believe that Devin Jones from the Mendocino County Farm Bureau has joined, and she might have a brief report to add.
Yeah, good morning, Jeff. I'll be brief for sure. I think we're following, for multiple reasons, some of the information that Mr. Gisconi was just talking about. We've been primarily focused on the drought issues for obvious reasons, but working with our counterparts in Sonoma County, some of the things that we have been advocating for are technology-based, which are somewhat dependent upon, having good connectivity, which comes back to this group. So increased numbers of weather stations, looking at improved technologies for soil moisture monitoring are going to be key in areas, for example, like Anderson Valley, who don't necessarily have alternative water supplies like we're working with over here in the Russian River in certain circumstances. So, if we can find improved connectivity, some of our technologies that are continuing to be updated for agriculture would be easier to implement and install more effectively and efficiently. So as the funding moves through, and as Mr. Gisconi alluded to, we're all kind of waiting to see how this giant culmination of multiple efforts is going to come through by the end of the month. I guess we're hoping to keep our fingers crossed. So if we get some drought funding mechanisms for some of these technologies, it'll definitely play into where we can actually implement those that have the connectivity currently to put those in. So that's about the only update I have right now.
Thank you, Devin. That was informative. Appreciate it.